Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Safe Space. My name is Brandy Lowry, and I'm a staff attorney at Lone Star Legal Aid in the Houston office.
Brittany. And I'm Brittany Hightower. I'm also a staff attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid out of the Belton office. And we're here today with this next episode of The Safe Space, and we're going to be talking about teen dating violence. Brittany, do you want to start with the disclaimer, and then we can have our guests introduce themselves?
Yeah, before we get started, this presentation is intended to serve as legal information and does not replace legal advice. Contact Lone Star Legal Aid at 1-800-733-8394 or go to www.lonestarlegal.org for more information on legal assistance. Again, this is another episode. Everybody knows that February is one of the National Teen Dating Violence Months. You know, February has a lot of nationals. So we will be talking about teen dating violence, and we will start with our guests. Please introduce yourself. Amanda, we'll start with you, and then Marina.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy and Outreach at Texas Advocacy Project.
Hi, my name is Marina Montemayor. I am the Violence Prevention Educator at Northwest Assistance Ministries here in Northwest Houston in the Family Violence Center.
Well, thank you both ladies for being a part of our show. I'm sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
It's okay. We're a little rusty. We took a month off, and so we're kind of finding our groove again. Well, ladies, we're really excited to have y'all here. Let's start out. Can both of you maybe give a little bit of your background and the kind of work that you do involving teen dating violence?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Amanda, like I said, and I've been working with survivors for about 15 years, all across Texas, but originally from Houston. So started working in domestic violence shelters there. And that's where I had like my first taste of doing prevention work within schools across Texas. And then from there, I got to actually work on some legal policy that we'll talk about in our presentation today. Some of the first legislation that was actually passed related to teen dating violence prevention work in schools and what that looks like in our education space. And then now at Texas Advocacy Project, in our advocacy and outreach department, I help to run and implement our prevention conversations and groups and our Teen Ambassadors of Hope campaign, where we bring in teens from all across Texas that get to actually lead the work because we know that's the best way. When I was in high school, one of my best friends was actually really physically violent and emotionally abusive to her boyfriend. And our whole group like never talked to any adult about it. It was all just, you know, we carried that burden. And so we know that that is happening, you know, all across Texas. And so we want for the teens to be prepared and for them to know what they can do to help a friend, which we'll talk about today. But that's kind of like my experience for the past 15 years.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Marina, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you're doing right now for Northwest Assistance Ministries?
Yes. So I actually feel fairly new and continuously inspired, such as people like Amanda who've been in the field for 15 years. So I have been in it for 3 years. After I graduated from school, I accepted a position as an AmeriCorps member in the Arizona governor's office, working on domestic violence prevention, which was primarily grant work. And there I really became familiar with many incredible organizations across the state, particularly one, Bloom 365, who was really involved in prevention education. And so after my year there, I was continuously inspired by the work that needs to be done in this movement. And I particularly inspired by prevention work, really preventing it from happening, from future victimization. So I knew I wanted to come back from Texas because I'm from Texas. And so I accepted this position at Northwest Assistance Ministries. I've been doing it for the past 2 years. And my role is primarily, working with students. So I work with middle school and high school students, really kind of digging into this prevention work.
Well, thank you both. We're excited to have you here.
Well, let's go right into our questions. And this is for both of y'all. What is the definition of teen dating violence?
I'll start it. I'll go ahead. So we really defined, or the definition that we really work with is teen dating violence is a pattern of coercive or intimidating or really manipulative behavior that one partner uses to exert power and control over their partner. And when I talk about this definition, I really stress 3 words here. The first one is pattern, because we recognize that in dating violence and abusive relationships, this involves a series of abusive or intimidating, manipulative behaviors that happen over a course of time. And really over this course of time, these behaviors tend to intensify. So we really stress that this is patterned, repetitive behaviors. And then we always bring it back to power and control, because this is really one partner fighting for control over their partner's life or many parts of their life. And you want to take it away?
Yeah, that's great. I feel like that's all encompassing of when we talk about dating violence. I think, what's really important, an important aspect of that nowadays, especially with this teen population that we're working with, is to understand that some of those tactics that abusers use aren't always as overt as physical violence. It can be, something seems as simple as asking for all of your passwords to all of your social media accounts and to your phone, and making sure that if you have a phone that has face recognition, that they have a face recognition on there so they can get into your phone whenever they want. So sometimes the tactics that abusers use seem a little bit more nuanced. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely add, the only thing I would add to that wonderful definition is the cyber piece of it, the digital abuse that we see so often, especially with this population that we're talking about today.
So what are we looking at when we say teen? Who are we describing as teen? Is it the 13 through 18, or is it 11 through, what is considered a teen or that population?
The way that we look at teens is anybody 13 to 19. Mm-hmm. But when we're doing work and prevention work, obviously we're having conversations with much younger groups as well. Just the way that we tailor those conversations look different. Mm-hmm. But we know that preteens are experiencing unhealthy relationships, even in friendship dynamics, right? And so we want to make sure that we are still talking about the same dynamics and the same power and the same control stuff that we talk to with the older teens, but just a little bit, in a more age appropriate way.
Cool beans.
So to kind of piggyback off that, I think we could probably have a whole day long training about what types of behaviors constitute this stuff. And both of y'all touched on it a little bit, but could you expand on this a little bit? Amanda, you kind of mentioned some of the access to phones. I think parents out there are really concerned about sexting, whether it's consensual or not. Can both of y'all talk a little bit more about what you've actually seen when you're working with teens?
This definition that I gave, it's a huge definition. It's really big and it's really broad, which I think could be a good thing because this is really a complicated matter. So dating violence can come in many different forms. Of course, when I think we think about abusive relationships, our minds often go to physical violence or sexual violence. But as Amanda said, it can certainly be digital. A lot of these behaviors can happen online just as they can in person. A lot of emotional and verbal abuse. So just putting them down, beating somebody down, making them feel unworthy, making them feel like this partner that they're with, that's the only one that could ever love them, really embarrassing them. We even see, a lot of financial abuse, which isn't really talked about, I think, especially in younger relationships. Giving money, if I give you this and you have to do something for me, maybe showing up at their job, embarrassing them, forcing them to lose their job, preventing them from working, and especially stalking. I think a lot of conversations that I have with teens, especially when it comes to phones, is just stalking, wanting to know where they are, using locations on apps such as Snapchat. You can see somebody's specific location down to exactly where they are. So a lot of stalking behaviors we see in younger relationships.
Yeah, I would say to answer part of that question that you asked earlier, the parents that are concerned about what do I need to look for in sexting, we do trainings all across the state in lots of different school districts, and in every single school district before the pandemic, sexting was such a huge issue. People airdropping and sending pictures out all across campuses. And then the pandemic happened and it was like cured, right? Like there was no sexting that was happening anymore, apparently, which was a really interesting kind of dynamic of the pandemic. But what we saw is like as kids and as schools started opening back up, it just started happening all over again. And so, you know, we talk about safety planning, monitoring your kids' phones. How do you monitor them? Are they allowed to take their phone into their bedroom with them, or do you make them turn it in at a certain time? Like, what are those boundaries and parameters? But also just like, what is your relationship with your teen, and having open and honest dialogue about the dangers that some of these, you know, sites and social media sites have, and ways to protect yourself, and information that you probably shouldn't put out there because it's not super safe. But just keeping that dialogue open, I think, is really important, because when we see parents get really scared and protective, you know, I have 2 kids, they're not teens yet, but like the mama bear instinct is so real, that when you get that, you want to protect your teens. But as the tighter that you are like tightening the reins, then the more closed off and like dishonest that your teen might be. So we try to give strategies for parents and how to have and create open dialogue with their teen around how to exist safely online, and ways to create boundaries, even in relationships. Like, it's okay to tell your partner, like, I'm not going to give you all my passwords. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. Right. But sometimes those conversations feel hard and awkward. And so it's okay, like, to be awkward sometimes if it means that that's how you're going to protect yourself.
But then in regards to that, in protecting yourself, you know, so those are like some of the red flags when they're asking for passwords, or, you know, they're telling you, oh, you don't look cute in this dress, you should wear this dress. Then how should a teen reply back? Because like we're saying as adults, it's easy for us to say no. But, you know, teens on the same age, you know, range, like how do you coach them to be able to say it's okay to say no?
I mean, you know, here in Texas, I grew up in Texas, right? And so it was like, just say no to drugs. And we had this like DARE program. And so I don't know if anybody from DARE programs listening in today, like y'all did great, right? But we need a little bit more than like just saying no.
Right.
We have a teen leadership council who really helps to lead a lot of our work and the way that we do education. Because they're the ones that have the creative ways to say no. And so sometimes it's like sending a meme or a GIF or a GIF or like some like kind of like different way, right, to set a boundary without just like having to say no.
That's awesome. That's creative.
I'm telling you, they get real creative.
I mean,
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that is so, because I was just thinking, I was like, kids are so scared to say no. You know, they don't want to hurt their friends' feelings, or their little boyfriend or their little girlfriend, you know, they don't want to hurt their feelings. So I was wondering, you know, how do you set that for a 13-year-old trying to say no, like, I don't want to do that, you know, or feel pressured into doing it.
I like that what you said, Amanda, kind of using these creative ways, maybe even inflicting some levity in it. But I think it's, also really empowering these teens that they have a voice, that they have that power to actually say no. I think so often they're just, we don't think of them as like capable human beings with their own thoughts and opinions, but it's instilling that belief that they are, and they have a choice over themselves.
That's a really good point. And I guess kind of to piggyback off that, I think there's kind of been more work, I guess, within the movement when working with adults to kind of recognize their voice and give a lot of ownership back to victims and more of a victim-centered approach. So I guess in that way, how is this work different when working with teens as opposed to working with adults? How are they victimized differently? Does the work need to be different? Do we need to respond to them differently? Anyone can jump in.
I know. I was gonna give her the opportunity. I would say that most of the adults that we work with experienced teen dating violence whenever they were younger, right? And so there's this pattern that you see a lot of times where it's not, here's what I would say. It's a long answer, but I'll try to make it really short for our purposes of today, is the dynamics that exist within domestic violence and dating violence, those same dynamics, like Marina mentioned earlier, the power and the control exist in the teen dating violence as well. It's the same thing. When we talk about relationships with teens, we talk about it on a spectrum. Okay, so we say like, you have healthy relationships that live over here, you have unhealthy relationships that live in the middle, and then you have abusive relationships that live over here. And then let's talk about like what's in each category. And I tend to like ask the teens, like, is this unhealthy or abusive? I just led a presentation last week where I cut out a bunch of different scenarios and had the teens walk around the room and put it on which, do they think it was healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? Healthy is easy to identify, right? But it's the unhealthy and the abusive that those lines get a little bit more blurred. And so, especially within these teen relationships, we're really looking for those different ways that abuse can exist, because you may have two partners who don't live in the same household as one another, right? They're not constantly around each other if they're, stuck at their house with their parents or on vacation or something like that. And so we have to understand that the dynamic is that one person is trying to maintain power and control over another person in that relationship. That is universal. No matter how old you are, you're in a relationship, one person is going to try to maintain power and control. And they're going to do it through lots of different ways. But the ways that teens tend to do that can look a little bit different than, say, adults, right? And that's where that like cyberbullying and the sexting and harassment through like technology, like that's where all of that stuff comes in, because that stuff is more prevalent in 24 and under group.
Yeah, and I would just again stress that we're seeing again in this movement, especially teen dating violence, is really centering the voices of the youth. There's a lot of like youth councils really leading the way. And I think that's kind of the future of this movement. I mean, they know their dynamics and their climate way better than we ever will. So really empowering them to see the change, I think, is kind of where this movement is headed and is really the future of it.
So are you saying that if I'm getting 15 text messages a day, that's not cute?
That's a great question. I ask my teens, I say, is 72 text messages in 15 minutes abusive? And no, but listen, all the teens are like, I don't know, is it? And I'm like, well, what's the context? What's the context of the 72? Is it 72 gifts? Is it 72 like memes? Is it, like what's 72? Do you feel threatened? Do you feel like your partner's tracking you? Are they trying to check up on you constantly? Are they popping up on you? Like you're at a store and then they pop up and how did they find out that you were there? That's the stuff we're looking for. So it's the context within those 15 or 72 different text messages that we're looking for.
But that's just what he does. He's just concerned. He's just concerned.
Yeah. I was going to say, Brandon, you bring up a really good point, because I think especially when it comes to like digital abuse and all these text messages coming in, I think it's really hard to navigate, because that can really be mistaken for care of, oh, this person really cares about me. They want to know what I'm doing, where I'm at all the time. And again, yeah, I think as Amanda was saying, these lines can really be blurred. And so again, are there threats there? Are you scared that if you don't respond, something's going to happen? And then I always tell the students that I work with, like, have a conversation. If that doesn't work for your life, like have this conversation. And if it doesn't change, if it intensifies, then yeah, this is unhealthy. This is crossing the line. So yeah.
I think that's a really good point too that both of y'all have made, and y'all have kind of brought up several times, is that it's not so much what are specific behaviors that are red flags. It's more about how does it make you feel? How are you able to address it with the other person? It's all about context. And I think that's a really important point. Marina, you kind of brought this up a couple times too, of really staying focused on teens as people, as individuals. They're the ones really who have a lot of the answers about how we respond to this. What are some things that teens, let's say somebody's watching, if they're concerned that they may be in an unhealthy relationship, or if they're concerned that a friend of theirs, somebody that they love, and also Amanda, since you had your anecdote at the beginning, I would love to hear from you as well. What are some ways that they could respond, whether it's choosing to go tell an adult, or how would they respond to that particular friend?
I mean, this is such a good question because I would say it's actually the number one question that I get from students where somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I think my friend could be in an unhealthy or abusive relationship. I don't know if it is a friend or if it's them coming to ask, but I think that they do recognize these in their peer groups. And I think this is really hard to navigate. If we see somebody that we really love and care for, and we see them in an unhealthy dynamic, it's incredibly hard to navigate. So first and foremost, I just always encourage conversations with yourself and with your friends. You know, I always say that I'm in here just starting the conversation with yourself and for them to start talking about it. So I, again, want them to feel empowered that if they see something, say something. You know, you see something, start that conversation with your friend of, hey, I noticed this. What's going on? How are you feeling? How's your relationship going? And then again, when we're supporting somebody in an unhealthy relationship, it can be really hard because we just want to fix the problem and solve it right then and there. But again, I always, just as I want to empower them, I want them to empower their friends, right? To make healthy decisions and have their friends really guide them through what they need. Yeah, what they need, what they're comfortable, what their limits are, what their boundaries are, and just as a friend, continuously empower them and let them know that you are a friend, because a common tactic too that we see is isolation. So if you're in an unhealthy or abusive relationships, your other relationships really start to fall away. Your world just kind of dwindles down to this one person. So just constantly be there, that if they really need to turn to you and they do need help, that you're continuously there.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with all of those things. I would also say that, you know, one of the important things, and I think that this is it's always a really hard relationship to navigate, because how do I make a decision? Who do I tell? What's the right thing to do? Am I overstepping? But at the end of it, like it's your friend that you love and you care about. So set aside time where they're not with their partner and their partner's not around. Like I wouldn't text this to a girlfriend of mine that might be with their abusive partner, right? Because if they're monitoring their phone, like that's not going to be safe for them. Like obviously they're not going to answer any of those questions. I would say like, hey man, I saw that, like I've noticed like we're not really hanging out as much, and I'd love to like have you over, or like let's go grab coffee, or let's go somewhere and like can we just hang out? And then naturally have that conversation. I have this phrase that like confrontation is just a conversation. It does not have to be negative, right? And so it's okay for us to have these hard conversations, because then it can impact change and it can help get your friends safe. So like the top 3 things that I'll tell our teens is like, be a friend, like talk to your friend and let them know like, man, I feel like something's off, and I just want to let you know, like, I love you and I'm here for you. And I know of this like really awesome place that can help you if you want to talk to somebody else. And then we give them our number, right? Like Texas Advocacy Project. And there's so many amazing organizations on our call today, right? And like, I'll have them memorize our number. I'm like 1-800-374-HOPE. Now, what is it? I'll have them like repeat it back to me. So, because are they going to have our card and our pamphlet and like give it to that person? Like, no, like that's going to go in the trash can. You know what I mean? But just like, hey, I love you. I care about you. I feel like this might not be a healthy relationship. And if you want to talk to somebody else, like I know this other person this other agency that can help you, and it's confidential. So like, they're not going to call your parents and tell your parents, or call your school and tell your school. I think that's really important, you know, and powerful, because you're not telling them what to do. You're not pressuring them into making a decision, and you're letting them know that like, I'm still going to be your friend regardless of what happens.
So, how common is teen dating violence? Like, do we know the numbers? Is it like more common? Is it more now? Well, we've been in COVID. So has it went down since COVID? You know, did we get a lot prior to COVID? You know, like, what is that looking like? And anybody can take this one.
I'll let Marina take it.
I was going to say, Amanda, do you know anything how numbers have changed during COVID? I don't know specifically, but I mean, the popular statistic, which is quite shocking, is 1 in 3 teens will be a victim of dating violence before they graduate from high school.
That's a lot. That's scary.
That is scary. Yeah. That is 3. That is an insane statistic. when I'm standing in front of students, I'm like, this is why I'm here. This is why I have a job, because of the statistic. So, and also when I'm talking to students about this, and we do this game of like, is this true? Is this false? 100% of the time, the students are like, absolutely, we completely believe this. Nobody is shocked that 1 in 3 students could be a victim.
Wow. Yeah, I would say that because of COVID, there hasn't been any statistics like specifically for teens, but what we have seen is an increase in domestic violence just in general in all populations, right? Especially vulnerable populations. And then like the access to resources has in some places decreased, right? And so there's this imbalance right now of our agencies are seeing an influx of calls and an influx of services that are needed. I'll say like anecdotally, I'm literally working on right now, pulling some of a whole protocol together because we're seeing like the highest risk cases. And I've been doing this work for 15 years. Like I've run shelters, I've done the work, right? And in all of my 15 years, I've never had the amount of high risk survivors on my caseload as I've had this past year and a half. And I think I would, invite Brittany and Brandy for y'all to talk about y'all's experience in that too, but that doesn't exempt teens, And last year or in 2020, the youngest teen that was killed in Texas was 14 years old by an intimate partner. And so we know that teens are being killed. The legislation that was passed that said, hey, you have to talk about dating violence in schools and you have to implement protective orders in school, stay away orders, was created because Atrala Mosley was killed at her school by her boyfriend who she had just broken up with. And her mom, Carolyn Mosley, went out and made sure that like that didn't happen again and that we had laws on our books to impact that change, right? And so we see that this is such a tragic situation, and that hasn't decreased because of COVID.
So do you think the violence, well, I'm trying to figure out how to word this question. I guess the teen abuser, or is it a learned behavior? Is it like, are they learning, this from home or watching it on TV? Like what is making them, I guess, be the aggressor in the relationship? Because they're teenagers.
Marina, I'd love for you to be able to give your experience too in all of the work that you're doing. I will say that like the statistics consistently show that if you grow up in a home where there's violence, then you are more likely to either be in a relationship that's abusive or to be the abusive partner. But that doesn't mean that every single person who's grown up in a violent home is going to be an abusive partner or be in an abusive relationship either, right? And so that's why education and advocacy within schools is so important, because it allows us to break that cycle early on.
I completely agree with everything Amanda said. Yeah, your history is not your destiny, of course. But of course, I mean, these are, it's hard to say because of course, if these are learned behaviors. So if you're seeing this in your household, that's what you're gonna think is a healthy relationship. That's what you're gonna think is love, and that's what you're gonna enact. I also just think, I really believe that we don't talk about this enough. I know when I was in high school, I didn't have anybody talk to me about healthy relationships. We're kind of just supposed to figure it out along the way. And so a lot of the times, these are the first relationships that these teens are getting into. And so I do think that they just are not aware. Like sometimes I'll be in a school where we're talking about these unhealthy behaviors, and you'll kind of see this light go off within somebody's face of like, oh, I'm kind of showing up like this in my relationships. So of course, these are learned behaviors. I also think we're just not having conversations. So a lot of the times kids are just, picking up things from the media and from each other and just kind of rolling with it and don't really know.
So you touched on something that I wanted to ask about that I think is really important as well. Part of this new, or kind of the direction that violence prevention work has gone into that I think is really cool, is addressing abusive behaviors or people who are engaging in abusive and unhealthy behaviors to try to correct that, rather than you are a monster that we need to criminalize and lock you away forever, but really trying to change that pattern of behavior and getting them to recognize that. So what are some things that you do when working with teens about identifying those behaviors in themselves and then working to correct them?
I'll let Marina answer this
one. Let's see. So working with teens of like first really just identifying, hey, these are red flags, these are behaviors. And really, I mean, because I think I'm also trying to empower these students that it's okay to have needs and wants and insecurities in a relationship. Like, that's okay. Jealousy is not a problem. It all shows up in us. It's how we really enact on that. So really just being conscious about these behaviors that are kind of playing out.
I would also say that, you know, that was for our friend group. So I'll talk about it like specifically to like what I did in high school. So like I said, my best friend in high school was the person who was was the aggressor, like was physically violent. And our group kind of dealt with it. Everybody dealt with it like a little bit different way. Some of us were like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy, like stop this, like, and confronting the person that was actually like having those behaviors. The problem was that she grew up in a family that was really abusive. And so that's what she knew. Right. So had we had the tools now that we have now, I think that we could have had a lot of different conversations. Right. And so one, I think that those relationships aren't healthy. So it's not like stay in the relationship, go to individual therapy, go see your school counselor, and then like, it'll all be fine. Like, maybe let's like put a pause on this relationship so that you can like really heal what's going on, right? So that you can learn some tools, you can gain some tools in your tool belt, you can figure out different strategies. When you start to feel this like jealousy and this like rage bubbling up, what do? Right? So not in an anger management model, because that's not what we're talking about here. It's more in a violence prevention model, right? And so when we're talking to teens, if they've grown up in houses that have violence in them, we don't want, what did you just say, Marina, earlier? You said your history is not your destiny. Oh my God, can somebody put that on a bumper sticker? Like, holy moly.
I love that.
I loved it.
Yes.
But like, your history isn't your destiny. And now is the time that you can get the tools to be able to change the trajectory of relationships for the rest of your life, right? But you can't change in the same, you can't heal in the same environment that hurt you, right? And so for these teens, it's like, let's get you the tools. Let's teach you what a healthy relationship is. Let's learn different strategies for when you are feeling like something's not right, how to have those conversations, how to set those boundaries, and then where to go, like who to process that with. What does your community look like? How are they helping empower you?
That's an excellent point. Well, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, if somebody does come up and, hey, I think I'm a perpetrator, like I recognize these behaviors in me. Also, I try and really challenge them to think about how do you feel in this relationship? And 10 out of 10, they are also not feeling well themselves. So exactly as Amanda said, like you can't, obviously you're not feeling well. Obviously, you know that this isn't what you want from you. So yeah, maybe take a step back. Again, teaching these skills of conflict resolution. How do we communicate? How do we process our feelings? How do we identify our feelings? So those practical skills, of course, and then always, I'm encouraging these students to have, who is that one person, that one adult in your life that if you know something is wrong, something's going on, who can you turn to? And I know, of course, I'm always pointing people to counselors. They hold a wealth of knowledge. They are there to support them. So as Amanda said, yeah, too, what is your community like? Who can you turn to? Who can you talk to about this?
Yeah, I think that therapy is like so hard, right? Like, especially for teens who are like, that's crazy. I'm not calling a counselor. I'm not going to individual therapy. I don't know. Maybe kids now really want to do that. That was not something that was real in my life when I was growing up, but like, maybe it's a coach, right? Maybe it's a, like she said, like, who's that one adult? Like, who's that one person? Maybe it's like your friend's mom. I had friends, who were like my second parents, right? Like maybe it's them. who can you go to just like have this, to dump this on so that they can process it with you.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about the reverse. Well, what are the first steps to take for the person that's actually being abused in a relationship? What do they need to do? Because we talked about the abuser side. We talked about, okay, if the friend is watching their friend being abused. So what if the actual teenager is being abused? What steps do they need to take?
The first step I would say is like, let's form a safety plan, right? Mm-hmm. Let's form an emotional safety plan. Let's form a physical safety plan, because leaving and breaking up is hard. And so trying to figure out the safest way to do that, if that's what that teen wants. And they can do that by contacting any of our agencies, right? Or talking to an advocate or talking to a counselor, but like coming up with a safety plan. What do you think that your partner is going to do if you do break up? What's the safest way for you to break up, right? Is it in person, around other people, in a, public place, or is it like through text message or like sending them a DM on Snap? Like, what does that look like? And then like, do they know where you live, and could they come to your house, and do you need a protective order? There's legal options that are available for teens, and teens can apply for these protective orders on their own. And now with this past legislative session, any adult can apply for a protective order on behalf of a teen as well. And so helping them understand that there's actually like legal protections available to you if you think that this person could kill you, if they've threatened to kill you, if they have access to firearms, if they have like participated in like high risk behaviors, like if they've tried to like strangle you or choke you, or if they've sexually assaulted you, like we really want to make sure that that there's legal protections. They're free. You don't have to pay to get these types of protective orders, and they can keep this person away from you. Not 100% of the time, but like 80% of the time. And that's really effective. That's a really effective tool on top of a safety plan and on top of maybe a school stay away agreement. And so really helping them to come to formulate, what do they think that their partner would do if they do break up, and creating a safety plan, knowing that they have access to those different types of protective orders, and doing it in a way that protects their own emotional safety too.
Marina, you want to add to that? Yeah,
I think she said it perfectly.
I was like, y'all are very knowledgeable and awesome on this topic. Like, this is very, very informative.
Well, on that note, is this something that teens are supposed to learn in school? Like, is this information that teens have access to somewhere? Like, how are they learning this? How are they getting access to y'all's violence prevention programs?
I want to hear about Marina's, but I'll say that for us, I'll talk about what the law is in Texas. So the law in Texas says that that schools have to have plans in place that say that how we talk about dating violence, how parents are trained on it, how teachers are trained on it, that there's school stay away agreements, a bunch of different stuff. It's a huge law. It's Education Code 37.0831. If you want to pop it into the chat box, you can go look it up later if you're a little nerdy and you want to get into the law. But this past session was interesting. And so now parents have to opt in to a dating violence education program within their school districts. And so we're seeing this impacting school districts all across Texas in a lot of different ways. So I'd love to hear how, Marina, that's impacting the work that you're doing within schools. What I say is, like, for us, we are still going into schools, we're still training teens, but we're also empowering teens with the information so they can go into their schools and talk to their friends and spread awareness and other creative ways, like through social media and through, different campaigns in spaces where teens occupy, and they can get the information that they need.
Yeah, so this new law, SB 9, first I'll start like what I do. And I think in a perfect world, I would talk to every student here in Greater Houston. But unfortunately, it's all relationship building with teachers. I think nowadays have so much that students need to learn. So I really just work with teachers who allow me into their classrooms. Most often it's going to be health teachers or interpersonal studies or family and consumer science classes. So this is kind of how I'm getting into these classrooms because it's already hitting their teaks. And so teachers are like, you come, you speak with them. So that's really how it's going. As far as SB 9, which is this new law, it hasn't totally affected us yet. I'm kind of on the edge of my seat just because, I mean, according to this new law, school districts need to provide this education to students and have it available to students and for parents to review. However, it has to be kind of per the recommendation of SHACs, the school health advisory councils. So our school health advisory councils that I'm working with, they haven't tackled that yet. But it'll come where, yes, parents will need to sign that permission slip. It has not come yet.
So you talked a little bit about the stay away order in the schools. So is that for, first explain what that is. And explain more what that is.
So a school stay away agreement is an agreement that is only effective on campus and at any like school related activity. So like a football game or a volleyball game or something like that. And it's not like criminally enforceable. Okay, so it's an education tool to help create zones of safety for teens who are in abusive relationships or who have experienced cyberbullying or who've experienced like sexting, that it's specifically available for those teens. And what happens is that a principal or an assistant principal will call in both sets of parents separately and the teens that are experiencing the violence and maybe who are perpetrating the violence. And they'll have these like parent teacher meetings and they will outline how they're going to create these zones of safety. So maybe the two parties like shared a health class together, for example, right? It's going to change the abuser schedule, right? So that they're not sharing classes anymore. They're not in the same lunch period. It's saying that the abusive partner or party has to stay in the classroom after the bell rings. And then, after the second bell rings, then they go to their class so that they're not going to intersect with that possible victim at any point in time during the day. If they violate that order, then they might have to go to like in school suspension or an alternative education program or to an entirely different school. When we're working with schools that are real rural and maybe they only have like one school in their whole school district, like how do you operate a school stay away agreement with like this one school? And you have to get creative, just like that's like one of the things that you do when you live in a rural town, right? Is you have to get creative a lot of the times. And so maybe it is if that partner or that person is not abiding by this order, then it is the in-school suspension or it is the alternative education program to keep them away from that victim so that they're not consistently like harassing and abusing. But if they are consistently still like abusing and harassing them, we really do want to talk to them about a different type of like civil order that could be criminally enforceable that is effective anywhere, not just on school campuses. But it was meant as an additional tool for schools to be able to use to help create zones of safety within their schools.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you're interested in learning, if there's somebody listening today, or if you know somebody who might need one of those school stay away agreements, you can usually talk to like a school counselor, or it's usually the assistant principals that are the ones that are helping to create and navigate those school stay away agreements. But if nobody knows what you're talking about, whenever you bring up that word, then you can call us at Texas Advocacy Project or one of the people on today's call, and they can direct you to how you can get those school stay away agreements.
How can a parent support their children if they're being abused or in an abusive relationship?
Marina, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So, I think, of course, when we talk about supporting anybody in an abusive relationship, there's some commonalities here, but I think it's really difficult, again, as it is always, to see somebody who's maybe been in an unhealthy relationship. But really, first, as Amanda said, especially when we're talking about confronting somebody about maybe behaviors that they've seen, find that right time and space. And again, I can't stress enough, have these conversations with your child and really listen. I think one of the statistics is for teens that are in an abusive relationship, only 33% actually tell somebody. And again, whenever I talk about this with students, they always think it's false because they're like, there's no way that many people tell somebody. They think it's much lower.
Wow.
So yeah, I think teens, young adults, they're scared to talk to somebody, that they're not going to be believed, that they're going to be blamed, that they're going to be shamed for this. So just open up that space to have a conversation and really listen to them. I would encourage, again, especially as a parent, I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine that urge to really solve the problems and protect is just completely heightened there. So really, as that conversation is going on, encourage them, really shame-free environment here. We never want to, especially if you're in an abusive relationship, a lot of the times the abuser is going to tell them that this is all their fault, that they are the reason that all of this is happening. So of course, assure them, I'm here, I want to support you. This is not your fault by any means. And really, again, no judgment, just be there for an open, honest conversation. And then again, what's the level of risk factor here? Are they in danger? And then if they really are in danger, then yeah, take steps to really involve authorities if that's what it needs.
Yeah, I think that, the preventative measures are so helpful. Like I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, right? And so I'm constantly like, consent is key, like yelling it around my house, right? So now my 5-year-old is like, hey, don't touch me. And somebody touches me. Consent is key. I said, don't touch me, right? So it's like, how do you start these conversations in really age appropriate ways at a younger, at a younger level, because so that those conversations don't always have to feel so hard later. But you can do all the things right as a parent and your teen might still be in an unhealthy or an abusive relationship. And so, just keeping that dialogue open. And then I would really suggest, like, for the parents, who are you reaching out to? Right. Who are your friends that you're calling to like process this with? Even like we take calls from parents all the time who are like, my teen is in an abusive relationship and I want this for them. And we're like, but do they want it? And like, here's maybe how to we'll give like parents individualized strategies based on the needs that they might have and what the experiences of their teens are. And then just like looking at a collaborative like way to address it. Like what are their teens' friends saying? And what do their activities look like? And what are the safest ways to intervene? And does your teen want you to intervene? Like, right? Like, I don't know if y'all ever had this experience when y'all were teens, but it's like, I don't want to tell my friend, I don't want to stay the night at their house. Like, mom, can you just like tell them that like, I'm not allowed to, right? Like, and like, so then it's the mom's fault or the dad's fault or whoever their parent is or their guardian is. But sometimes like that's okay, right? And so sometimes the teens want us to make those choices for them because that might be safer for them too. So really just like coming up with a plan, calling an agency like ours or like Lone Star Legal Aid, coming up with strategies, understanding what the legal options are in case you do need to go that route, right? Talking to the school, making sure that they're informed of what's happening, and keeping that dialogue open.
And I just want to reiterate something that both of y'all made, a point that both of y'all made that I think is really important is being cautious about the shame around it, because I think when I've represented parents who are trying to protect their children, or when I'm representing teens who don't necessarily know how to have this conversation with their parent, there's a lot of concern about shame is somehow I'm a weak person as the person who's being victimized, like somehow I brought this on myself, or I don't want to shame my parents because they raised me better, or parents having a lot of shame of where did I go wrong. And I can tell you personally, in my own family, we have family members who had 2 teen daughters who went through very, very abusive relationships. And this was not anything that was modeled at home. And these were not weak-willed children by any means. It's just coming to it that this can happen to anybody, and what do you do, you know, to try to reduce that feeling of shame so you can just help and be there and provide that support. So y'all both made very good points on that. I have one other question. I feel like we've kind of been talking about this in the context of heteronormative relationships, and I think that's a lot of what we all see. Are there some teens that maybe are more vulnerable? Are we seeing different kinds of dynamics and different kinds of relationships out there?
Yeah, for sure. I think that in any type of violent relationship or domestic violence or dating violence or sexual violence, there are going to be higher vulnerable populations, right? And so we do see that people who live in homes where there's violence, or people who live in poverties oftentimes have higher rates of intimate partner violence and dating violence. LGBTQ youth have higher rates, and the dynamics and the tactics that abusers use in those relationships, they'll pull on that person's vulnerabilities. Because they know how to keep them in that relationship and how to control them. Marina, do you have anything that you want to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely going to say, thank you for pointing out that sometimes these conversations kind of do happen in a heteronormative framework. But yeah, definitely. I was just reading the CDC research. They were saying that like 8% of high school students in the United States really report experiencing physical or sexual violence over the course of a year. And of those students, young women and LGBTQ plus youth are facing the highest rates of victimization. And again, we have to think about these different kind of tactics and barriers that LGBTQ youth are really going through. And of course, we have to recognize the role, how racism really intersects with this issue, how young women of color are often less recognized as survivors of dating abuse, and often, their experience is not seen as valid. And so consequently, they may face additional barriers to seeking help.
So then for the parents who the teen is doing the abusing, how can they respond or intervene?
Oh, bless it. Jesus, fix it. I would say, there have been laws that have been created that will hold parents accountable who don't stop the abuse, specifically in a cyberbullying space. We saw this come out of some David's Law legislation that passed 3 or 4 sessions ago, that would hold parents that if they don't stop the abuse from happening, then they can be held responsible as well. So I think that for the parents whose teen is the abuser, who's your community? What's happening in your home? What can you do to address the behaviors that are happening with your teen in an open dialogue that feels safe and isn't shaming? It's a lot of the same stuff, right? But then holding them accountable to that, right? At the end of the day, like, you're that kid's parent. And so maybe these teens, maybe there's a teen who it didn't grow up in a household that's abusive and has really super healthy parents, and or has a super healthy guardian, right? And they are an abusive person, then I would suggest, like, reach out to your community, call organizations like ours, set boundaries with your teen, have open, honest conversations, and find the resources for your teen so that they can get those tools to try to address the behaviors.
But what if the parents are in denial? I'm sorry, go ahead, Maria.
No, go ahead. What did you say?
I said, but what if the parents are in denial?
I was just going to say, I think a lot of this, I mean, there's commonalities throughout all of this, no matter what perspective you look at, right? People don't want to acknowledge, first off, that their teens are in a relationship. They don't want to look at them in that light. So of course, I think there's probably denial. So they're just turning a blind eye, refusing to acknowledge the problem, hoping it'll just will stop. I'm sure there's also a lot of shame there. Again, what does that say to you as a parent if your child is the perpetrator? But again, I think all of this, it's really calling on us as adults and as allies to youth to really step outside of our comfort zone, to start to challenge this. And again, as Amanda said, I love the fact that you're bringing in community who are your people that you can talk to about this, that you can, lean on, turning to experts such as everybody here in the organizations that exist in your community, and really just having these conversations again and again and again.
Unless Brandon, unless you have any other questions, I think that's a beautiful note to end it on.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was like, I have nothing else because y'all covered a lot and everything. So this is really, really good. Well, ladies, tell everybody how they can reach y'all.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I want to say, for the communities to reach out because, so we can help prevent teen dating.
So at Texas Advocacy Project, you can find us on all the socials, except for TikTok. We're working on it, I promise, but it's just a whole nother world that I'm still trying to figure out. But you can contact us at 1-800-374-HOPE. You can find us on our website, texasadvocacyproject.org. You can also, like I said, find us on all of the socials. And if you or somebody you know might be a victim, we have attorneys on staff who can help provide free legal assistance exclusively to victims of intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and stalking. And then we also have a prevention side of it and an advocacy side of it as well, where we have social workers on our team and we have prevention strategists on our team who can either come into your schools and talk to you guys, or can come up with a safety plan and do that safety planning and danger assessment with people who might be in an abusive relationship.
And yeah, same goes for us. You can always reach us 24/7, 7 days out of the week at 281-885-HOPE. I really work with incredible women who are on the other side of that line, ready to help in any way that we can. You can reach us on our website, namonline.org, as well as all the socials. We now are on TikTok, which is actually, it's very exciting. Come, it's really fun. The students are excited, and I think it's such a great way to prevention work is continuously having these conversations, right? Talking about these topics. So it is a fun way to kind of relate to them outside of the classroom. NAM Prevents, you can find us on TikTok as well as all the other socials.
Cool, I'm still learning TikTok.
Me too, and I have to say, I see the appeal. I really see the appeal.
It is. It's addicting. I mean, I can watch TikTok, but trying to create a TikTok, I need a teenager to help me.
I think I might be too old for that.
Well, as always, you can contact Lone Star Legal Aid for your legal matters. 1-800-733-8394, or you can contact us at www.lonestarlegal.org. And we service 72 counties. So,
well, thank you, ladies, both so much for being here. This was a really wonderful conversation, and we were excited to have y'all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was great talking.